I'm really pleased that Eric Soller, who is the VP of Corporate Development and Strategy at BlueRock, has joined us now. Eric, you presented this morning. What were you presenting on?
Thanks for having me, Vivienne. I was speaking about the challenges and sort of the opportunity around building a pluripotent stem cell-based company today. And BlueRock is a company that we founded in December of 2016. The simple premise is that there are hundreds of millions of people across the globe that suffer from degenerative diseases. And these are diseases where really what's happened is that the cell that's responsible for providing function, the cardiomyocyte in your heart that makes it beat, or the neuron in your brain that actually makes it important for thinking and memory, has been lost. And what we know is that the current drugs and biologics that we have available can really only start to help the symptoms of those diseases, but not address the underlying problem. And that problem is that the cell has been lost and it's not going to regenerate. So at BlueRock, we believe that we have the technology to actually create that authentic cell and to replace it in patients so that they can restore the function that they've lost.
So that always sounds absolutely great, but the problem is that you need to scale up, don't you? And that was the subject of this morning's session, really, the idea that you have to take it from being a bespoke to a much more scaled up operation. How are you going to do that in BlueRock?
There are a couple of things that we're doing at BlueRock that we think will really help us with that scalability problem that you're identifying. And by the way, the reason why we're able to do this with confidence now is that there has been success with that first wave of therapies where there are autologous products that are highly bespoke, as you're saying. The first thing that we're doing is working off of an induced pluripotent stem cell platform. What that means is we can take a blood cell from a healthy donor, we can de-differentiate that with Nobel Prize winning technology from Japan into a well-characterized raw material that we have control over. And then we work with other wonderful scientists that are able to control the differentiation of those cells into the right target cell that we want to replace. BlueRock is also working on some interesting editing strategies to allow those differentiated cells to be delivered to any person regardless of their blood type or HLA type. And so what that truly means is that we're trying to create an off-the-shelf therapy that's cryopreserved, which should be relatively easy for people to deliver at hospital systems around the world.
And really that's the holy grail, isn't it, to have an off-the-shelf product?
It absolutely is. I think that it's so interesting to watch our field advance and to get towards personalized medicine. And I think, it is absolutely true that everybody's disease is different, but the realities of our healthcare system and how you get these wonderful therapies truly distributed across the world, I think require an off-the-shelf solution that's cost-effective.
I mean, we've seen enormous new investment in this field. We've seen it really leaping ahead. Do you think its moment is now?
Absolutely. BlueRock, we were thrilled to receive what was one of the highest Series A raises in biotech history from our investors, Versant Ventures and Bayer. And I think the moment really is now. When you look at what's happening in the space, I think the first wave of improvement that we've seen with the adoptive cell therapies for immunotherapy, these CAR T therapies, are really showing people that cells are really going to be a very important part of the pipeline in the future treatment paradigm for patients. And it's interesting to me, I have lots of discussions with our other colleagues and peers within the space, and when you speak to gene editing companies, they're actually very interested in getting cells into their pipeline as well. So we really actually believe that what we're building is an important fundamental component of how we're going to treat disease in the future. And the kind of investment that you've seen in the space and the translational results that I'm hearing about at this conference are just giving me more and more confidence that we're going to get there sooner than we think.
So you're working in an exciting area, but you're here at a conference full of exciting things. What have you heard around here today that's really got you thinking, wow?
Well, I was interested to hear the results from Cynata, which is arguably going to be one of the first iPSC-based allogeneic products to be approved. They've got exciting data in graft versus host disease, which is an orphan condition, often a very straightforward one for these products to translate through. And so what I'm taking away from that, Vivienne, is that we are actually seeing the first wave of the products that BlueRock was trying to create actually get close to real clinical proof of concept. And we're just heartened to see that this second wave of therapies are really going to start to show the kind of evidence that we think is going to be needed to drive their adoption. So I'm excited about what the afternoon will hold.
And how important is it to have these sort of events?
These sorts of events are terrifically important for us. I mean, as much as what's happening on stage with the wonderful keynotes and the ability to meet people from MHRA and the regulators alongside the CEOs and the chief scientific officers that are driving the innovation in the companies, I'm really always looking forward to and enjoying the partnering discussions that happen. There's such an opportunity for collaboration in this space and for us to figure out how not to recreate the same thing in two different places and sort of build core competencies but then share those with others. And it's a wonderful collaborative environment to have those kind of discussions.
Now, this is a very Brit question, but we're hearing a lot of American accents here today. Is London a particular centre for your world?
London is becoming more and more important to us, and one of the reasons for that is actually the slight differences that we see in how regulators like the FDA and the folks here in Europe deal with our advanced therapies. And so we become more and more interested in dual strategies, or actually are running trials in both places. And I think there are advantages to that to safely develop the therapies that we're working on, but get them to patients faster. I've also made trips up to Oxford to meet with scientists there. There's some very exciting cell work happening. So I find my work is taking me more and more to the UK for not just trying to get drugs approved, but to find new science that we might want to work on at BlueRock.
And finally, what are the challenges? I mean, what are the real, barriers that you see? I mean, obviously, one is going to be the cost of the product.
Right. Yeah. So cost is certainly one of them, and I think it's interesting because we basically are in that moment, as you've pointed to, where we have the first approved what seem to be efficacious therapies. The gene therapy that Spark has made for hereditary blindness, and then certainly the two approved therapies for liquid cancers that are based on CAR T therapy. I think BlueRock is in a unique position because we're a couple of years behind them as far as when we expect to really have appropriate proof of concept data in the clinic that could be leading to an early approval. So in some ways we're able to kind of watch as things start to sort themselves out. And I think there's some interesting levers already that Spark and others are looking at, value-based pricing, and really trying to find ways to work with payers to show the lasting durable benefit of this and what it means in terms of offloading the costs of patients coming in and getting more treatments or revision surgeries. Without saying too much about the way things work in America, it helps certainly when you have a one-payer system and you can kind of look at patients, kind of end to end. And we have a difficult challenge in the U.S. where people move a lot between health plans. And so I think there's going to be a lot of reform that happens and things will settle a bit. But BlueRock is already engaging in those discussions and really trying to make sure that we're setting ourselves up appropriately so that these therapies can actually reach patients when the time happens. So that's one thing. I think the other one that we also work at quite hard is how do we actually control costs on our end. So really trying to make good decisions around manufacturing, working with a really internal team that I think is quite deep of process development engineers that will get us to closed systems and scalable solutions, more potent cell therapies so we don't have to deliver really, really massive doses. And all of these things we feel like we can pay on towards the healthcare system and ultimately the patient because we're making right-sized therapies that are cost-effective from the get-go. I'll make one more comment, which is that not all stem cells are created equal. What we're doing at BlueRock with very, very tightly controlled, qualified iPSCs is very, very different from a lot of things you've probably read about with unregulated stem cell clinics and people that are frankly, injecting very, very strange and, variable cell sources into people. And the FDA in particular has jumped in on that very quickly and is trying to work both with us and with those clinics to make sure that we do the right thing for patients and we're safe. But I just encourage people to always be very careful about, showing up at a doctor's office and signing up for a therapy that hasn't actually been looked at carefully by regulators. We believe in making safe therapies for people.
That's for sure, and we'll all be watching BlueRock with great interest. Thanks so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.